Hello and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd and I'll be your host for the next hour of answering your gardening questions. And I am happy to announce that we are answering your calls tonight. You can dial 1-800-676-5446. Our master gardeners are finally standing by to take your call. They will help you with those questions. You can also contact us with questions and pictures. That's via email, and that address is byf@unl.edu. Please do tell us where you live. Give us as much information as you can about your landscape issue. Do not forget to stop by our social media channels, YouTube and Facebook. As always, we like to start with some samples. There are no insects involved with that one, Wayne.
No, not directly. However, it's one of those things our listeners and viewers get to hear about us talk about washing things off of the plants all the time with the hose. So I thought I'd bring some ideas of what we use, or what I use, to wash those insects off. Most of the time when it's just a grab and go, I grab the hose and I use my thumb over the end to control the jet of water. And now you do have some plants that are more delicate than others, some that can take a little more. There's a lot of options out there. You get these dial sprayers here. You can adjust the flow. You have some control of when it's on and off. You have the ones that have multiple options, flood, cone, center, jet. Jet's probably what you're gonna use more often. Showers we're gonna use for some stuff that comes off easily. And then, you can use a wand, all kinds of fun stuff with that. Dial control, on and off. But this is when it gets more fun. You use the jet nozzle. You get a brass jet nozzle. This is the shorter one. They make longer ones. I don't think it really matters. The idea here is you get a stronger jet. You're not going to want to use this on your more herbaceous, lower growing stuff. This came in handy last year when I had some temp caterpillars up in my apple tree. And so they were a little further up. Now, on the end of the hose, I don't have a lot of control with this. But one of the tricks that I figured out is you can take the end off some of these wand sprayers. You just screw on, it's a standard hose attachment end, and you can put it on. Now all of a sudden, instead of an uncontrolled jet nozzle, you've got yourself a more sophisticated weapon. You've got your dial control if it comes with it, but you also have the handle, so it's an on and off opportunity. And this gave me an extra little bit of reach going up to my semi-dwarf apple, because they were, of course, right up at the top. And I was able to break up that webbing with the jet nozzle, as opposed to the jet setting on something like this. It just gives me a little bit more oomph.
So perfect. As always, we talk about IPM, and water is a perfect weapon.
It's great in the yard, in the garden. Kyle, I'm sorry, you did not choose a water topic tonight.
I did not. I feel left out. There was coordination that went on, and I was not involved.
Apparently you didn't get the memo.
No, instead I just brought some turf that has some spots on it. So that's exciting, right? Yeah, one of the turf diseases that we are starting to see really crop up now, at least in my yard, is brown patch. Brown patch, caused by a fungus, Rhizoctonia solani, is one of the most common turf diseases in the world. It affects almost all types of turf, but we tend to see it a lot on our fescues here in Nebraska. And so we have a few different blades that I had pulled out, and one of the distinguishing features of this disease are these irregular lesions that occur on the blades that also have a kind of a purplish or brownish margin, which we can kind of see right there. On occasion, these lesions may coalesce and go across the entire leaf, but generally they are just kind of this irregular shape, often with kind of jagged points. Now, one of the nice things about brown patch is it tends not to kill the crown, and so it only really affects the leaves. So it often is it won't negatively impact your turf next year, but you can have pretty severe problems during a normal growing season. And so we tend not to see these lesions occurring in our shorter mode turf. So golf courses, greens, things like that. We won't see these lesions. Instead, there'll just be kind of almost kind of a brownish purple, smoky colored ring that occurs. But then we can get these patches that form, and these patches can be anywhere from a couple inches wide to a couple of feet in diameter. So can be pretty devastating, especially if you really care about having a really nice looking lawn. Now, as far as control, the biggest thing that we can do is to kind of manage our moisture, and so making sure that we are allowing the turf to dry out between waterings. And the other thing that we can do is to manage our thatch layer, and so going in and doing some of that dethatching to reduce the fungus, the fungal inoculum that resides in the thatch. Also, reducing the thatch layer helps them dry out a little bit as well. Fungicides can be used. Fungicides such as propiconazole can be effective, but in most homeowner situations, we really don't recommend a whole lot of fungicide use with this one, primarily because as the turf grows, it will grow out of this disease. So we do see it be a little bit more devastating in some of our slower growing lawns. So make sure that we are fertilizing adequately, making sure that the grass is growing at a rate that we want to, and then hopefully those lesions will just grow up and you can mow them right off and you won't have any long-lasting problems for it.
Excellent. I have lovely brown patch at home.
It's all over my place.
All right, John, you did get the memo, so you have...
Well, I mean, he worked water in, talking about managing moisture.
I had to somehow.
Yeah.
Right, not that, like, I don't know if people can hear at home, but there's like a hum behind us because it's like pouring the rain.
I know.
So
and running under the building.
Right, it sounds like we're going to flood off here in any minute. So I'm going to go to the total opposite of what Wayne was talking about because he was using like high pressure, and I'm going to go low pressure, and I'm going to talk about drip irrigation. And so this is for those times when it's not pouring the rain and you need to water your garden. And so we're going to actually control the pressure. And so we put our kit together. There's a filter here, and then this pressure regulator slows down the pressure so you're not hitting your plants with a high pressure blast. And it goes to little hoses and things that you run throughout the garden. And so this is a supply line. And then you puncture a little hole in here and you put a little connector here and you run it to a plant, or you can even get like a tape or something that already has holes in it, and you can just run it through your vegetable garden, through your field. I'm using these drip emitters, so these go toward the end. It's this little contraption right here. And the reason that I like to promote drip irrigation is because it uses way less water than, say, using sprinklers, etc. It also, we talk about diseases when we splash water on our plants, and so it really reduces diseases because we're delivering that water right to the base of the plant and not splashing up, and we use a lot less water. And so, it is honestly just a little bit of a drip. And so we can actually, we can demonstrate here, I think. So let's see.
If you're going to spit in that thing, that is going to be really good television. We can see it drip.
Right. And so it's the rain. We've got a leak in the ceiling. And so we can control this. This is a gallon per hour. So if this little dripper ran for an hour, it would put a gallon of water right in a spot right there. And we can control our water. Soaker hoses are harder to control because they don't pressure regulate, and you have more water at the start than the end. And sprinklers, they go everywhere. So you can actually deliver the water right to the plant, and your water bill will be much lower.
Excellent. I don't know how the rest of the show is going to go, but let's
keep you on your toes, Kim.
Let's start with some pictures, Wayne. This first one, he wants to know, what is this? He found it in Bellevue in a heavily wooded area, and my response when I said it was going to be on the show is it looks like a baby alligator on a branch. What is that?
There's a few too many legs for that.
I know. I did count to make sure it wasn't.
You can't see the pro legs in the middle. They're not true
Yeah.
legs gripping onto that. That has 4 pairs. This is one of those Catocala caterpillars, so underwing moths. They're very brown to gray moths, and then they'll have a bright color like pink, orange, yellow, red up underneath.
And they really are 4 or 5 inches long and look like that.
It can be.
All right. Good guys or bad guys?
Enjoy the show.
Okay. And then your next one here is yellow caterpillars eating rhubarb. This is northwest of Seward. They were eating the undersides, and she says they were very hungry. They wonder if this will run its course. They have about 80 feet of rhubarb.
That's a lot of rhubarb.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a yellow woolly bear. Despite they can range from yellow all the way to brownish to blackish in color, depending on the stage and the condition that they're in. Though they love rhubarb, I see them on it all the time. Pick them off. That way you can promote that plant to be putting into the root crown and delivering more delicious rhubarb for next year. And I see these pictures flashing across as I'm trying to talk about the rhubarb, but they're all the same thing.
Right, exactly. And this is actually the one was Woodbine, Iowa, and this one is on a hydrangea in Grand Island. So they're
They
all the
feed
same.
on a lot of different
Okay.
things. They'll even get into soybean in our row crop. So
Control?
wide host range. Pick them off probably is the easiest way. They pose no danger to you. If you pick them off by hand, there's usually not enough of them to.
Even on 80 feet of rhubarb, you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah, you might be all right.
All right, all right. And I assume kind of a rapid move from caterpillar into that cocoon, maybe?
They're getting close. They should be about 1.5 inches or so when they're fully grown.
All right, thank you, Wayne. Okay, you have several pictures that look an awful lot alike,
All
Kyle. The first one is, this is zucchini, and we had a little bit of a follow-up email from when this came in. He was treating with baking soda, 4 teaspoons per gallon of water sprayed daily, and he said he did that about 10 times and it's gotten better. But this is on zucchini. What is this?
This looks like powdery mildew. Very, very common. Powdery mildews affect pretty much all of our plants, but we just get this white powdery growth up on the top. With our cucurbits, it also often will kind of follow the veins where we have moisture that pools, and so that's kind of why we have that cool kind of white variegation along the veins here. As far as the baking soda control, I think 4 teaspoons is a little bit light, but if you've been seeing good control with it, then that's great. Generally, we recommend anywhere from 3 to 4 tablespoons of baking soda per gallon of water. But if you have a severe outbreak of powdery mildew, add 3 tablespoons of a horticultural oil to that baking soda mix, and you tend to get a lot better control for it.
Excellent. Your next one is cantaloupe leaves in Randolph, and she wonders why her leaves are doing this.
And again, it's powdery mildew, excess moisture with the heat. Fungus can very easily grow. Again, same control, just manage the moisture, and if you want to, use a baking soda and horticultural oil mix.
All right, and your next 2 pictures are cucumbers, northeast Lincoln. Just the one plant. She doesn't see any insects. The others look healthy at this time.
Okay, so this could be a few things. Unfortunately, a lot of our diseases can look very similar, just with these general light tan spots with a chlorotic halo around them. I think that this is angular leaf spot, and so this is caused by a bacteria, Pseudomonas syringae. This bacterium thrives in kind of warm, moist conditions, which we have had a lot of. Now, not a whole lot of good controls for angular leaf spot if it is bacterial. However, it also could be downy mildew. And so downy mildew is another very damaging disease of a lot of our cucurbits. Controls for that often do require a fungicide application or a copper-based product can work well for downy mildew control. But the fact that you're only seeing it on one plant makes me lean a little bit more towards the angular leaf spot. With downy mildew, that would likely hit most of the cucurbits that were in the area.
All right, and you have one final one, and this is rhubarb in Plattsmouth. New plants planted in May, and 2 to 3 weeks later, she had small insects all over the crowns and leaves, and everything died off. And she's wondering, does this look more like crown rot to you?
Yeah, I think it is a crown rot. What exactly is the cause? I'm not sure. It could be one of our water molds, such as Phytophthora. We also have some bacterial crown rots of rhubarb as well. As far as the insects, pretty sure those are just roly-polies. And to my knowledge, they are just fun things for kids to play with. I have never heard of roly-polies really causing any damage. Wayne can correct me if I'm wrong.
I haven't really either. They're more of a obnoxious nuisance for some people than they are a real issue for our plants.
Excellent. All right, thank you, Kyle. Your first 3 pictures, John, come from Atlantic, Iowa. A 10-year-old maple looks very stressed, not lush, leaves are shriveled. It was deer scraped. They've been very dry. This is what we're seeing for trunk and foliage. And so any thoughts on this poor maple?
Yeah, I think that's just weight stress. So we see that damage on the trunk. We see that the leaf, the leafing out looks very thin, so that could be from that damage from the trunk. A lot of times though, when we see thin crowns like that, it could also be a root issue, some sort of, girdling root. About 10 to 15 years is like the right time in the lifespan that we start seeing if we planted it incorrectly, that we'll get like girdling that will, strangle the tree once it grows out. Could be, so I think it's just got so many potential issues that it's a short-term tree.
All right, thanks, John. And then your next 2 pictures are Cairo, Nebraska viewer. This is the first year growing garlic. She planted it in the fall. She has a bulb with a bulb, and she's wondering, is this normal or did she do something wrong?
Yeah, so this garlic, even the babies are having babies here.
Mm-hmm.
So hardneck garlic varieties produce what's called a scape. So it's like a growth that comes out the top, and it has little flowers or bulbils on it that are like little tiny garlic bulbs. Because of some sort of weather stress or some other issue, the scape didn't deploy. It just sort of stuck in the stem, and as it developed, it sort of split that stem open. So it's probably just a weather issue. So the garlic's just fine, and you can actually, you could technically plant those little bulbils. It'll take like 2 or 3 years to get an actual garlic clove, but.
Excellent. All right, thank you, John. Well, back in the 90s, Reggie Carlson could be seen right here on Backyard Farmer as the host of the program for a number of years. It appears she took her time here seriously because her acreage in Lincoln is really beautiful. Reggie said she had plenty of help from her husband, Doug, so let's take a few minutes to check out her home.
We started with, pretty much a blank canvas. However, the property itself has got some innate qualities that really were challenges. And so we had to come up with sort of a plan to figure out what we're going to cultivate and what we're going to just control, because we couldn't handle everything. Although at first I thought I could, and that's a mistake. And so my advice, if you are looking to, go and move to an acreage or buy one or however, that you think about it as a really long-term project. You're not going to go put up some trees and plant 1,000 hostas and everything's going to be beautiful. It will take some time, and you will go through some changes too. When we were looking to buy this place, I was just delighted that there was a water feature that ran through the property. And this water feature was really an open stormwater system. I did not know that at the time. I thought it was a creek, but it isn't. It's a sewer. And so at the time, we could literally hop over it. It wasn't a very big deal. There was a creek running north and south, and there was a runoff running east and west, and so perpendicular water features. There was a huge slope that one could barely get, you know, a mower up and down the slope. And so slowly but surely we had to come up with landscape plantings that would work with those areas. My husband, Doug, has done an amazing job of fixing places that were really problematic. And one of those places is where water has run down and was running over a deck, over a swimming pool deck that we had. And so he dug a huge trench. It kind of looks like a dry waterbed type of thing, but what it does is it collects the water and slows things down, makes it possible for me to actually have a garden there. If you visit me, you will recognize that there are about 45,000 hostas. And the reason for that is that they always look good. They look good when they're coming up. They look good, halfway good when they're flowering. Then you cut all of the flowers off and they look beautiful all the way into the frost. And besides that, they require almost no water, because we have no underground water sprinklers or anything like that in this yard. My least favorite thing is the lawn, but it's just something that you have to do if you're an urban acreage, you know, pretty much. As I approach my golden years, I am moving towards shrubs. More and more shrubbery, please. And I think that that is wise, because we won't live here forever, and anyone who moves to this place is at first going to be overwhelmed or needs to, you know, hire a gardener quick, because I spend probably in the summer, it's almost a full-time job. And so my plan is to make everything as easy as possible. A lot of native grasses, or ornamental grasses, I should say, not necessarily native. A lot of shrubs that are beautiful. Hostas, flowers that hold their own but stay in place, and make it easy for the next person to get used to.
We want to say thanks to Reggie for showing us that beautiful landscape, and it really is amazing. It's around the corner from me, so I know what it looks like for real. All right, Wayne, your first picture saw this bug on a rose, and he said it looks a little bit like it has an Aztec mask on its back. What is this?
This is a spined soldier bug nymph. This is one of the good guys. You want to keep him around. He's going to eat a lot of caterpillars and other soft-bodied things that might be willing to do damage to the rose.
Spined
soldier bug nymph. It's the nymph, so that's why it's got that crazy color pattern on it.
Excellent. Nice to know. All right, this is a Polk, Nebraska viewer who found this guy in the garage. What is this spider?
It's one of our wolf spiders. Again, predatory. Eat a lot of other things you may not necessarily want around.
Yep.
So if you can, let it be.
And nope, not my favorite. Okay, and then your next two pictures. This is, we don't know where this viewer is from, but this particular insect has been on her dwarf Joe Pye weed flower buds for several days. She says it did not bring any friends. So is it eating, or what is it doing?
That is a wheelbug nymph. Wheelbugs are our largest assassin bug that we have, at least in Nebraska. I'll reference Nebraska. So this is one of our good guys. So it's waiting for something to come along and visit that flower bud once it starts flowering and have a meal.
All right, excellent.
Waiting for the buffet to open.
Exactly. Yeah, not quite 8 o'clock.
Right.
All right, Kyle, your first one. It's a pretty simple question from this viewer. They want to know what this fungus is.
Yeah, you are lucky. This is a really cool one. But this is a hairy stemonitis, also known as a chocolate tube slime mold. So yeah, just one of our slime molds shows up with moisture. When it dries out, it will kind of poof and go away. So enjoy it while it's there.
I don't think we've ever seen this one.
No, I never have either.
Nice.
like I said, I'm jealous.
All right. This is an Omaha viewer, and it could have been from multiple places in the state. Why are the redbud leaves curling?
It could have been from here on campus as well. This is herbicide injury to the redbuds, very, very common. They are highly susceptible to a lot of our growth regulator herbicides. And that's just what you get, that kind of leathery appearance. Yep, nothing to do about it.
All right. We got your next two pictures from one viewer, but we had 2 or 3 others actually send in the same question. It is discoloration and yellowing of barberry. They've been very healthy and they're several years old. They're wondering what this is. Dieback in the center and some severe dieback now and strange things going on.
Yeah, this one is interesting. Barberry is generally fairly resistant to a lot of our diseases. Anthracnose is one fungus that can cause some foliar leaf spots like this. But the way that we have the kind of the purpling and the yellowing and even dieback in the middle makes me wonder if there's not some sort of wilt that's going on, maybe a verticillium wilt. Often plants can overcome it if they're otherwise vigorous. But as plants get older, as they experience other stresses, such as the crazy winter that we have had, some of those wilt diseases can become a little bit more evident. So that's my thought for that. However, I'm really not sure, so would recommend sending a sample to the clinic if you can.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Okay, we have a little bit of vegetables for you, John, because you like vegetables better than trees sometimes.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you.
This is a viewer who's asking why some of his peppers look like this and others are fine and they're all colored peppers. Any idea? And I know some of these may fall to Kyle, but you're kind of the vegetable guy.
Right. Well, when I zoomed in, the leaves looked a little curly on this one. So I'm thinking it's herbicide drift. That's a common answer we're going to have for a lot of stuff. So you get that strapping of the leaves, the curling. Like if you look at the curling of the leaf and you can't flatten it out, like you couldn't manually flatten it out and it would look like a normal leaf, that's probably herbicide damage versus like wilting from like an actual wilt or heat or something like that.
All right. Your next 2 pictures are an eagle viewer. Potatoes. The planted sprouted potatoes that she got from the grocery store. They were in containers with new soil. Came up about fine, but then the new growth started to curl. No insects. There are spots. Have you seen this before in your potato patches?
Well, that's another, I think, herbicide drift there. And it can, you know, with the pepper and the potato, it can be wherever that herbicide drifts. You can have one plant here and the next plant over. It's perfectly fine. It's wherever the wind lands. Some of those spots could be maybe some sort of insect feeding, but I think most of it is all herbicide, that cupping. Any other thoughts from disease and insect over here? Pestilence?
Nope, they're all quiet.
Oh, yep, there we go.
I've seen aphids do some cupping and curling, but they're typically easy to find.
Yeah. I think you would see aphids or something like that. I think that's all drift.
All right, your next one is, can you tell us what these round growths are on the potato plant?
Well, that is actually a potato fruit. So potatoes and tomatoes are actually very closely related, same genus. And so under the right weather conditions, potatoes will actually set fruit. And that's actually how you get like new types of potatoes, is by crossing potatoes and collecting the seeds. We typically don't see this, and most people go and buy the potato, like the actual potato, to cut up and plant. But there is actually an All-America Selections winner that is a potato from seed called Clancy.
Nice.
And that's really fun. So yeah, there's tomato fruits.
All right, and your final 2 are a Wausau, Nebraska viewer. String beans are stunted, some come out of it, some are delayed. What's the cause?
I'm wondering, those leaves look kind of curly and cupped too. So I'm gonna just go with the drift answer. That's what it looks like to me.
Yep. It is time to take a look around our garden. Our plants are in the ground. They are growing like gangbusters. There are always a few chores to do. Here to tell us more from the Backyard Farmer Garden is Terry James.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, everything is looking beautiful. So now it's the time to start looking at your plants, knowing what your plants are supposed to be doing, maybe deadheading some of those plants, getting some of those flowers that you don't want on the plants gone. So we're looking at our coleus. Remember, coleus, you're growing not for the flowers, but for the foliage. So just clip some of those flowers off. If you have your asparagus, let it go. Now is the time that it's actually taking all of that energy from its leaves back down to the roots to winter over for the winter. We're also looking for insects. A couple sightings in Omaha of some Japanese beetles. So we're really making sure that we are on top of it and making sure that we're looking for those Japanese beetles when they show up here in Lincoln. We're also looking at our tomatoes, getting some of those extra suckers off those plants. The best thing to do is be proactive and looking for all those problems before they start. Stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and check it out.
Right now it is time for Lightning. John, you are up.
Okay.
This is a Bennett viewer who planted white Vienna kohlrabi on April 15th. There are no bulbs, just leaves. Why?
It takes a little while for those to develop, so give it a little time. I don't know if they will before it gets too hot.
Okay. This is a viewer from Plattsmouth who wonders if strawberries are planted in the fall, will they bear fruit next spring?
Possibly, if they're developed.
All right. A viewer planted rhubarb plants this spring and wants to know what to do about them over the upcoming winter.
You can just cut back the dead leaves. You can mulch them if you want, but they're pretty hardy.
All right. This is a Lincoln viewer who wonders if dyed wood chips are safe. They've heard that they contain heavy metals and oils.
I don't know that I've heard that. Everything I've seen says that they're safe.
All right. This is an Albion viewer who wants to know if putting a 10-10-10 fertilizer is okay for the vegetable garden, and if so, should they do that now?
I would test the soil and see what you actually need.
All right. Very nice job on that one. You ready, Kyle?
Born ready.
Born ready. Okay, that doesn't mean you still are. All right. This came from Adams and Omaha and Lincoln. Privet. Old privet hedges have just looked terrible. The middle has died. What is it? Do we know?
It's probably old age. Old age plus a lot of stress that we've had. Yep, the weather.
All right. This is a Loop City viewer who had a 5-inch tall orange thing attracting flies come up in her garden. It is gone now. What is it?
Sounds like a stinkhorn mushroom.
All right. And what should she do to keep it from happening again?
If you dig down, you'll find some kind of egg-looking things. They almost look like snake eggs. You can dig those up. Otherwise, you can just apply fertilizer to the area to try to get other plant material to break it down.
All right. This is a Byron viewer who had leaf spot in her iris, and she's used mancozeb every 7 to 10 days, but still has it. What to try now?
I would maybe try a different, something like chlorothalonil or just some other product.
All right. Is daylily showing crummy leaves right now? Is it rust or is it drought?
Most likely drought. I have not seen any daylily rust yet.
Nice. Nice job. All right, Wayne, you're up. Ready?
Sure.
This
Go for it.
This is a young viewer from Omaha who knows that all insects do something good. His question is, what do ticks do that's good?
They're parasites, and what the ecologist will tell you is that parasites are a sign of a healthy ecosystem.
All right. This is a Seward viewer who says some sort of caterpillar is eating the foliage of her coneflowers. What should she do about that?
Well, if it's the foliage, they can inspect and pick off, or they could use like a carbaryl or permethrin type products if they really feel the need to spray.
All right. This is a Omaha viewer who wants to protect his blueberries from Japanese beetles when he's out of town for a week. How can he do that?
He can spray before he leaves, or he can use a netting that would exclude.
All right. This is a Beatrice viewer whose neighbor wants him to tarp a new beehive. When the street is being sprayed for mosquitoes in Beatrice, should he do that and then remove it the next day?
I'm not sure if he has to tarp it. He just needs to plug the entrance to keep them from going out.
All right. This is a viewer who's, whoop, too late. We'll hold that one for you. Nice job. Let's see. Looks like John.
I think
That was a
oh,
tie.
we're
Tied.
tied. I'll give it to him.
All right.
Thank you.
John, plant of the
appreciate it.
week.
But look at him over there. We don't want to associate with him. He only got
I'll
4.
admit to being the loser this week.
All right, John, plants of the week.
Oh yeah, I've got to do that, right? Got tied up in, all that fun stuff.
Too much banter.
Too much banter, right? She's going to kill us.
Give you the look.
Right, give us the look. So we have 2 plants of the week. This fun guy here, this is button bush. And if it looks familiar, if you watched the space race, this one's called Sputnik. And it's really fun. There's another variety that's common called Sugar Shack, smaller variety. Does often have winter injury in our area, but still puts on a good show. And then we have Bottle Brush Buckeye here, which is really fun. Can be 10 foot tall, up to 15 feet wide, has a tropical appearance, attracts pollinators, and so I guess button bush, bottle brush. Say that 10 times fast, right?
Exactly. All right, thank you, John. Okay, let's see. Your next set of questions, Wayne. This is a Bennington viewer. Sent in 2 pictures. This is a June 1st. They were dealing with an infestation of deer flies, and they used the bucket of death, but would like to know how to take the fight to the flies in their own habitat.
You really can't, because they're typically a natural habitat area, and you're not going to be able to do much, because this group of biting flies, they lay their eggs in vegetation overhanging water, and then when the eggs hatch, the larvae drop into the water. So it's kind of, we don't have things you can apply to water for.
Okay.
for
Any
insects
natural
like that.
predators?
Not that they're going to be able to encourage more so than the bucket is probably their best bet, like they're doing around the edge of the property. But it has to be able to move, that there's something to the movement, so.
All right, excellent. This is an Omaha viewer that has a mystery insect hanging around all over the plants. He thinks it's nibbling on leaves, but is it? What is this insect?
This is one of our soldier beetles in the genus Triferis. It's common, it comes out for about a week or 2 and then disappears. So we don't typically see damage from it. Just enjoy the fact that they're around and then let them be.
All right. Your next one here is a Bellevue viewer, wants to know what this one is. They land in the pool and they either sting or bite.
This is one of our small solitary bees. It's in the family Halictidae, so we would recognize that from our sweat bees, metallic green bees. Those are the ones that most people will recognize. This one's probably in the genus Lasioglossum. Again, it's one of our small sweat bees.
Sweat bee, no wonder it bites.
If they're in the pool and constantly getting in there, you might want to consider a log float or something like that. Obviously not wood log that you would put in your pool, but something that would function that way, so that they have a place to land, go down, drink water, then fly off and not get stuck in the pool.
Excellent. All right. Your first 2 pictures here, Kyle, are, she lives in the sand north of North Platte. Very drought stressed. She watered in the fall. These are Austrian and Ponderosa. Needles are looking wavy, curly, and brown. There is new growth most places except the terminal.
Yeah, so wavy, curly needles, often a good sign of herbicide drift. There's also some needle dieback, which is indicative of drought conditions, which we have seen a lot of in Nebraska. The other thing, though, zooming in, we can see some kind of brown spots on the needles, and so I think that you're also dealing with brown spot needle blight. And it's fairly common in western Nebraska. Can kill the top part, the tip of the needle, while the base remains green, and then just kind of forms these brownish spots in the middle. Generally, not a whole lot that's needed for control on this guy, so I would just try to encourage vigorous growth.
All right. Your next 2 pictures are young cottonwoods near Foster. And it looks like shotgun. What is this?
Yeah, this was a tough one. I think that this might be ink spot of cottonwood. It's a little bit early to be seeing it, but it does look like there are some kind of black, shiny, inky looking spots on there. And those are actually the fungal sclerotia. So those are the overwintering structures of that fungus. As they mature, as those lesions mature, the centers drop out, and that's kind of what we see. Tends not to be anything more than a cosmetic issue, so I wouldn't do a whole lot, maybe some pruning, but then sanitation, make sure that we are cleaning up those leaves at the end of the season to try to reduce inoculum.
All right, and your final two pictures are, this is an acreage outside Omaha with dogwoods, lots of them, and the wild dogwoods all of a sudden rapidly decline. The trunk and branches are covered with these strange bumps, and eventually they die. What is this?
It's another interesting one. I kind of think this may be crown gall, and crown gall is often found near the base of the plants, but we can have it on the aerial parts as well. Basically, it's a bacterium that causes this almost cancerous sort of growth to occur anywhere that there's a wound. And so it could be a lot of wounds. Generally, crown gall doesn't cause rapid decline of the plants like that. So I wouldn't wonder if there's not another underlying issue, maybe a root rot or something like that going on too.
All right, and nothing you can do about crown gall other than
just, prune at ground level if you need to.
All right. Okay, John, excuse me, your first two pictures are a Culbertson, Nebraska viewer, 26 diameter black walnut. Second year the tree is having issues. You can see the tree hanging over the house here, and you can see, I think your second picture is what doesn't have much foliage. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's, earlier we had some trees that I said, a lot of missing foliage, probably traced back to some sort of issue with the roots or some other issue. So I think, and this tree looks like it's like hanging right over that house. So that tree needs to go sooner rather than later, I think.
Exactly. All right, your next one is a Central City viewer. This is a peach. 80-mile-an-hour winds plus trunk damage plus ends of blossoms. She did have 15 years of peaches off this one. She's wondering if it's time for a gentle retirement.
Probably is time for a retirement for that tree. Peaches are really hard to grow here. We get a lot of winter damage. And then if we add that to 80-mile-an-hour winds and trunk damage, and there are other fruits. I know, like peach is one of my favorites, but there are other fruits.
Right. And on that note, this is a Foster. Your next picture is a Foster, Nebraska viewer. No, this one's Kearney. And this is a birch, 3 clusters of birch trees. They're all river birch. One has yellowing, and he did send a picture that showed the chlorosis in the foliage, yellowing on the trunk side, multiple sorts of issues going on. What do we think here?
Yeah, I think, we're seeing those issues, and having those multiple trunks, presents an issue. So I think, this is going to be one of those cases where it's a short-term tree.
Yeah, exactly. Good birch logs for the fireplace.
Yes. Or, like for decorate, they do them in like containers now. Like
right.
You can maybe sell them to like a florist or someone.
Your final one is also a peach. This is Pierce County, Nebraska viewer, and wondering what's going on this. 10 years old, and the late freeze has kind of devastated it. But so what do we think on this one?
Yeah, I mean, the late freeze, that could have killed out leaf buds, but it also could be some other issues. We get a lot of trunk damage and root damage. Also looks like it might be planted a little bit too deep. I didn't see a nice flare at the bottom there. So I think that's going to be a former peach tree as well.
All right, thanks, John. Well, what was once an oddity is now becoming a problem. Jumping worms are invasive, and as you'll soon see, they don't act anything at all like earthworms that we love to fish with. Here's Jody Green to tell us more.
A few years ago, some pictures of some worms that were not earthworms were sent to Backyard Farmer. And since then, we have found that the invasive jumping worm is pretty widespread in Nebraska. Sometimes they're called Asian jumping worms, sometimes crazy worms, or snake worms, and that's due to their behavior and the movement. They are pretty freaky, even for a bug lover like me and someone who enjoys worms, which, by the way, are not insects. They thrash around wildly, their tails may sometimes break off, they will secrete some yellow substance if disturbed, but really they are not like the earthworms that we know of. The invasive jumping worms mainly feed between the organic layer where we have mulch and leaf litter and the surface of the soil. So if you find that you're putting a lot of mulch down more often, or in your compost you're seeing weird worms thrash around when you're digging, then these can be those invasive jumping worms. These jumping worms are native to Asia, and over there they're not pests. But here they're considered pests because they do this thing which a lot of worms do, which is break down the soil into nutrients. However, they do this so quickly that the ecosystem may change because there's not enough nutrients left in the soil. So what happens is they break it down and then the rains will wash away those nutrients. So you may find your soil in some places look like spent coffee grounds and there's no longer any nutrients to provide to your plants. If you're wondering if you have jumping worms in your landscape, consider when and how often you get mulch delivered, where you get your mulch delivered, and if you've purchased any new plants. Quite often, the places that have the most reports of jumping worms are botanical gardens, nurseries, and homes that are importing or bringing in new plants. And often we find that, you know, we're all gardeners and we share our plants and we give gifts of plants. And many times we may be spreading the jumping worm. They're easy to see as adults, but not so much as cocoons, and that's how they're often spread. They can be found on tools if they're not washed properly, in treads of shoes and vehicles, but oftentimes they're going to be in that plant material. At this time, there are no products that can be used against worms or earthworms in the landscape, so we're not advising any treatment. However, if you do find jumping worms in your landscape, you're not supposed to pass them around to friends or neighbors, and you're supposed to destroy them. I hope you've learned something about jumping worms. There's nothing to panic. We are really still trying to learn about them and their effect in the landscape. So if you do find jumping worms, keep an eye on your plants. Maybe there are some plants that will do okay, and over time we'll learn more.
So you can get an idea of the difference between jumping worms and the regular ones. What is that difference, Wayne?
Well, what you look for on the worm is what we call the clitellum. It's a swelling on what our regular worms would be towards the front end, and it looks like a saddle on our normal ones, not our invasive jumping worms. It looks like a saddle. It doesn't go all the way around. There's like an underside where it's not at. It's segmented and it's raised above the rest of the worm's surface. On an invasive jumping worm, a full-grown one, by the way, that clitellum will be smooth and flat and pale in color and will encircle the whole worm and not be segmented. So that's what you're looking for the difference between the two.
Besides which, the jumping worms are so creepy. Okay.
On that note.
On that note, here's your picture. This is a 36-year-old linden tree with white gunk on the seeds, drops down to another leaf, white non-sticky. What's the insect involved here?
That's a spittle bug. I know we're used to seeing them on plants down lower on the ground, but my linden trees in the backyard get these things too.
All right.
Nothing to worry about.
Excellent. Then we have a Northeast Lincoln viewer. She noticed a preponderance of what she's calling eggs on this tree. What are these?
This is hackberry nipple gall. It's caused by a psyllid, and you would be hard-pressed to find a leaf without a gall on it on a hackberry tree.
Exactly.
It's kind of par for the course.
It is. All right. Then this is a Ord, Nebraska viewer. She's wondering why our hackberries are losing leaves, and she did send a picture of little hackberry leaves kind of all over. What is this, probably?
Well, it has a couple of galls on it. Like I said, it probably would. It would really help to see the tree in perspective to see what's going on, because maybe this is another herbicide issue that John should be answering. Maybe it's a disease issue that Kyle should be answering. With just the leaf that's yellow, I can't really say a whole lot.
It's a hackberry, they do that. And then your final one is a Gretna viewer, and she has a Triumph elm and has these red growths on the tips of the leaves. What is it?
So these are, I actually got these last time I was on too. This one looks just a little bit different, but galls can vary a little bit in how they look. This is an elm pouch or sac gall, and it's caused by an aphid that's native to Europe.
All right. Thank you very much, Kyle. This is a viewer that has real issues with apples. She's in Macedonia, Iowa. 2 dwarf apples on a trellis in a row of 10, and she's cut back these diseased branches. We have 3 pictures here. She has cleaned between the cuttings. Do we know what this might be? And she's hoping it's not fire blight.
It really does not look like fire blight. I'm not seeing any of those blackened leaves or anything like that. We're dealing with cankers. What the canker is, not entirely sure. Potentially an anthracnose canker, but based on kind of that dark discoloration that we can really see on this picture especially, I'm leaning more towards a phomopsis canker that's causing the disease. Regardless of what the canker is, pruning is the only real thing that we can do. You want to make sure that you're pruning at least 6 to 8 inches down past that wounding area. And then another thing that you can do is maybe then even apply a copper paint or something like that to those prune wounds to help prevent more cankers from forming.
All right, your next one I think is a Seward viewer with an apple tree and single large branch of a 20-year-old tree. Leaves are curling. Portion of the bark had split and was peeling. She's wondering if this is anthracnose.
I think that this is Diportha canker here. Diportha canker tends to cause that peeling bark, but again, canker ID can be very difficult from pictures. Control is the exact same for all of them. Prune 6 to 8 inches down past that wound.
All right, and quickly on this one, Kyle, this is Norfolk. What's happening with the top of the Bradford pear?
Most likely another one of these cankers that I was discussing, decreasing nutrient flow up to those leaves. That's why we're getting that yellow coloration.
All right, thank you, Kyle. You have 2 very quick ones, John. The first one is so fun. This is an Elk Creek teacher. She has a pineapple off a pineapple that she grew. How does she keep it growing so it can become edible?
So you give me a question that's not a dead tree or drift, and you give me like 30 seconds.
I do. I want to see how good you are.
So how fun. So pineapples are like a bromeliad houseplant. They're the same type of species. And so they're a tropical plant. So you want to keep it well watered, lots of bright light. It'll be ripe when it starts to yellow up, and you should actually be able to sort of like squeeze it, and it would give lightly. And the fun thing is that you're able to harvest it when it's actually ripe, unlike the ones in the grocery store that are harvested when they're not ripe, so it'll actually taste much better.
All right, and your final 2 pictures quickly are hibiscus leaf damage. Is this from over or under watering?
That is overwatering.
All right.
There you go.
So stop doing that, right?
Right, stop doing it.
All right.